Hello Internet, so nice to see you. Some time ago I published a video on a chord and I call it the 6-5 chord. And I got a ton of questions on that chord. So today we're gonna see the frequently asked question, or I should say violently asked questions about that chord, because it seems to be controversial and some people really did not like that chord for some reason, and some people really loved it. The 5-6 chord or 6-5 chord. I prefer to call it 6-5 chord. Some people call it 65, but it's a 6-5 chord. It's a chord that has a bass note, then the fifth above that bass, then the sixth above that bass. The third, it's technically optional, but in this case, we are going to omit it most of the time, and I'm going to justify that. And these are the fifth and the sixth note in the scale. So sometimes it's going to be the perfect fifth and the major sixth, sometimes the perfect fifth and the minor sixth, sometimes it's the diminished fifth and the minor sixth. So let's go and see the questions.
Isn't calling it 5-6 and 5-flat-6 more appropriate?
Well, you do have a point. The thing is, I first found this chord in a Baroque manuscript talking about how to play that kind of music, and they use this notation called the figure bass or the basso continuo or taro bass, depending who you ask. It's the same kind of notation, and in that notation they put numbers on top of notes, and in this case they put a 6 and a 5, indicating that many notes above the bass in the scale. And so they never indicate if the sixth is major or the sixth is minor, if the fifth is perfect or diminished. If they put a 3, they never tell you if the third is major or minor. You are supposed to know in that kind of notation. You are supposed to know in what key you are, what are the notes in it, and essentially just be present, essentially, to know what's going on. In modern notation, in modern chord notation, which is much, much, much later than that, instead, we prefer to indicate if the third is major or minor, so we talk about major triads and minor triads. If the sixth is major or minor, so we talk about major sixth and flat sixth and all these kind of things. So you do have a point. In modern notation, those chords would be indicated this way. I mean, the C 6-5 in the key of C would have the notes C, G, and A. And you will call these a C sixth with no third, because that's what it is. It's a C major chord like C, E, G, in which I add a sixth, but I eliminate the third. If I was doing the same thing in the key of C, but from the E note, again, this would be C 6-5 in this notation. If I was doing E 6-5, still in the key of C, my notes would be E, B, and C, and it sounds lovely because of the dissonance between those two notes. And so you will call this in modern notation an E, technically E minor, with a flat sixth, no third. So since there is no third, it's not clear if you have to put it it's minor or not. Some people will say you absolutely have, some people will say that you don't have to, but it would be something like that. So yes, in modern notation you would use the flat 6 and the 6th. Why didn't I use it? Because I'm a bastard. No, because it's actually easier to not put it, because first of all, hey, you want to build a little bit of awareness on where you are in the key. Second, this allows you to do stuff like some of the sequences I did in other videos in this channel, where you just say, and on this note you put a 6-5 chord, and the quality of the 6-5 chord changes. Okay, this is just like saying I'm playing the triad on the first degree, the triad on the second degree, the triad on the third degree of the scale. You know that in major the first triad is major, the second is minor, the third is minor. You know that in minor, the third triad is minor, the second triad is diminished, the third triad is major. You know these, and if you don't, you should. And I'm doing the same thing with this. It is a matter of convenience and a matter of taste. I'm doing this in this video because I think it's more convenient. If you think it's not convenient, you are totally free to take your notes and write down the chord exactly the way you want. I'm not forcing my notation on everybody, okay?
By the way, videos about 6-9 chord without a third, 6 sus2, and 6-9 with suspended fourth, 6-9 sus4 chords would be fun to watch.
They would. And so let's do this right now. A C 6, suspended 2. Okay. You actually know this chord already, because if I'm doing this, it's C, suspended 2, D, the 5th G, the 6th A. You don't know it this way, but if I respell this with the root on D, this is D, G, A, C. This is a D, 7, sus4. It's a very common chord. It's a great sounding chord, okay? So you never talk about C6 sus2 because every time you play it, this sound is stronger and you're gonna hear this as a dominant suspended chord. That's why this notation is very uncommon. Okay, I mean, I'm not saying this is wrong, it's just very uncommon. You're gonna hear this instead. Those two chords are inversion of each other. Okay, I'm not saying this chord doesn't exist, I'm just saying it's more commonly just notated this way. As for the other chord you mentioned, which is the C, 6, 9, sus4. Those would have the notes C, D, which is the 9th, F, which is the sus4, G, which is the 5th, and A, which is the 6th. Again, respell it from D. This is D, F, G, A, C. Let me just do this. D, F, G, A, C. This is the D minor pentatonic. So a C6, 9, sus4, it's just a D minor pentatonic. If you play it as a chord, you're playing 5 notes at the same time, and you're just playing all the notes of the pentatonic at the same time. Okay, simple as that. But you can see it as a scalar accord, it's both correct. But again, those notations you propose, this and that, are very uncommon because we have other more common notations that are simply more in use and clearer to musicians.
In case there is any confusion, in traditional figured bass harmony taught in colleges, the 6/5 chord is an inversion of a dominant 7th with a 3rd in the bass. The alternate theory that is being taught in this video refers to intervals relative to the root, and I think that it serves its purpose well. Though the nomenclature would confuse a person educated in traditional harmony, refer to the Berkeley Contemporary Music Notation textbook.
This is actually incorrect as it is. I'm sorry, but I mean, it's just plain wrong. Why? Because when the figured bass notation was in use, nobody was talking about chords. Okay, nobody was talking about chords in the modern sense, and especially the concept of inversion was not invented. We know because the concept of inversion was invented by Rameau in his book of Harmony in 1722. Okay, 1722. But the figured bass notation was in use for, as far as I know, at least a century before that. So nobody ever at the time would have thought of the 6/5 chord as an inversion of anything because there were no inversions. Okay, so that's the first problem. The second problem is that the commentator was saying that the 6/5 chord would be the first inversion of a dominant 7th chord, but that's not true. It's an inversion of a 7th chord, not necessarily a dominant. Let me show you because there are two problems in there, and it's important that we understand them. A C6/5 chord again will be C, G, and A. If we go by the rule of third of bass or figure bass, the third it's implicit, so I could put the E inside, but every time you see then the realizations of those, when you see how people were actually playing, if they were playing in 4 voices, they were playing those 4 notes. They were playing in 3 voices, which happens, they were eliminating the third, which is what I do in my videos, because I like the sound without the third much better. Okay, so keep this in mind because it's important. Now this C, E, G, A, it's a C6 chord if I write it this way. It's also an A minor 7th in first inversion with the bass of C. The notes being A, C, E, G. Okay, but that's the point. It's an A minor 7th, while the commentary is saying that it's a dominant 7th chord, but a dominant 7 would be an A 7th with a bass of C sharp then, the notes being C sharp, E, G, A, but we are in the key of C, so there's no C sharp, okay? Now, I am really sorry every time I have to say somebody is wrong. I am really sorry when I have to say, but I want to say it because I want to make sure people have correct information about all this. I don't want to make anybody unhappy. On the other hand, like in this situation, when I say that, then the comment section exploded. Too bad. Then again, the problem is that colleges today are teaching you traditional harmony and they talk about chord inversion, which is traditional, but Tauro bass, figure bass come before that, so it's even more traditional, okay? And I think you should put it in the right historical context to understand. Then again, this is my choice. If you guys want to understand this as an inversion of a seventh chord, as long as it's not a dominant seventh all the time, and it's the correct seventh chord, I have no problem with that, if that makes it easier for you. Just think that this is not what was originally intended. It's equivalent, but not what was originally intended.
Okay, but if the 6 isn't in the same octave as the root note, it almost has to be an octave higher, then it's not a 6, it's a 13. So since it's essentially impossible to play both 5 and 6 in the same octave as the root note, unless you're playing your 5 in a higher octave, you're talking about a 13 chord.
Okay, where do we start? First of all, if we call it 6th or 13 does not really depend on the octave, according to most people, but some musicians definitely do make the distinction where so it's 6th if it's in the same octave as the root at the lowest octave, and it's the 13 on the higher octave. I personally don't. For me, it's still a 6th, okay, unless I really need to specify exactly what it is. The difference between a 6th chord and a 13th chord is that traditionally, again, the 6th chord is the triad plus the 6th. So a C6 will be C, E, G, A being the 6th. A C13th would potentially contain the triad, the 7th, in this case would be a major 7th because I'm in the key of C, the 9th, D, and the 13th, A, and it's controversial if it contains the 11th or not. Some people say absolutely yes, some people say absolutely not. Honestly, it sounds better without the 11, in my opinion, so up to you. Okay, so those are not the same chord, and I don't have a 13 chord there. I have what I'm writing, again, is even different. It's a 6-5 chord, and it's just C, G, A. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the commenter says that it's impossible. What were the exact words? It's impossible to play at the same octave.
It's essentially impossible.
And that's strange, because that's exactly what I'm doing in this video. And let me show it to you immediately, exactly with those notes. Here's a little tablature. If I'm playing this on string 4, 3, and 2, I have my C on fret 10 here, my G on fret 12 here, and my A on fret 10 here. So, and those are in the same octave. But that's the sound of C, G, A, all in the same octave, and that was what he was saying, it was impossible. I can play at a higher octave. The fingering is slightly different. In this case, I'm gonna put my root on the 6th string. I have this, and I'm gonna play this and this. Now I have C, A, and G. Now the 6th is on the same octave. The G, the 5th is on the higher octave, and it sounds this way. And that's again the same exact chord with a higher octave. So both things are possible. I don't understand why people say that it's impossible to play the 6th and the 5th in the same octave as the root, when it's one of the shape I've shown in the video, and I explicitly mentioned that that's what I was doing, and I explicitly mentioned that that's my favorite way of playing it, because you have more dissonance between those two. So you see, that chord seems to be controversial for some reason, because it's just not a triad. I have no idea, because there is no third. I have no idea. But people have a lot of confusion about these and chords in general. It shouldn't be this way. Honestly, all this stuff should be fairly easy and there should be really no problem with that. Now, sure, I've used the figure-based notation, so people are not familiar with the figure-based notation. No problem, mea culpa. Next time I will use a more modern notation. But seriously, it shouldn't be that big of a problem. Incidentally, you guys should learn figure-based simply because it's very useful for some stuff. But anyway, if you don't want to, no problem. But it shouldn't be that hard. Now, my modest proposal is I do have a course on harmony and chords. Complete Chord Mastery, it's not a book. It's a complete video course that takes you from the basics up. We do everything you need to know about harmony and chords on your guitar. All the theory is done straight on the fretboard. There is no theory for the sake of theory here. Everything is immediately practical and everything is developed through exercises so you know how to apply these immediately on your guitar. If you have just a minute, click on the link on the top right to check out Complete Chord Mastery. If you like this video, smash on that like button and don't forget to subscribe and click on notification, otherwise YouTube will not let you know when I put up a new video. And if you have any comment, feedback, suggestions, write them down in the comment. I enjoy reading from you and I make videos on your suggestions. This is Tommaso Zillia of musictheoryforguitar.com and until next time, enjoy!